Leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, joins me now. We're just outside the Senate, where the throne speech was delivered earlier this week. And this government's fate is in your hands right now. So do you have a deal with the government on sick leave and on the benefits offered to Canadians who've lost their jobs, or are we heading into an election?
Well, first off, I have to say to all Canadians, our goal is never to find a way to tear down government or to go to an election. Our goal is always to find ways to fight for Canadians. And so far what we've done is we've secured one concrete thing. The Liberals were going to cut the help that Canadians who can't go back to work receive by $400. So their plan was to take the $2,000 under CERB and cut it to $1,600 in the new program. We fought back and got them to stop that and to continue the $2,000. So that's one big win for Canadians. The second piece is we want paid sick leave. And we're close. We're in negotiations and I'm very optimistic, but there's a couple of pieces still that we're working on to make sure any Canadian worker that feels sick in this pandemic doesn't have to worry about making that impossible choice of going into work sick or staying at home not knowing how they're going to get money and pay the bills.
So if you were going to put a percentage chance on fall election this fall, you're the only guy who knows, what is it?
Well, that is not my goal, so I'm going to be doing everything I can to continue to fight for
Canadians.
So
no election.
And get the results. That's not my goal, so I'm not trying to find a way to go to an election, so no, that's not what I want. I want to make sure that there's paid sick leave, and I want to make sure that people get the help, the same level of help, and we've achieved that so far. That's a big win for Canadians. And the second piece, we're very optimistic that we can secure it. So I'm confident we'll be able to move forward and continue to fight for Canadians.
On the second piece, though, that's really provincial jurisdiction. Are you confident that even if the federal government gives you their word, the provinces will be on side?
Well, I know that this is one of those things where if you ask a worker, someone who is dealing with that fear, if they fall sick in a pandemic, what do? They don't want to hear excuses about whose jurisdiction is. They want to know that it's getting done. And I'm confident if we do the right steps at the federal level, that we can work with provinces and deliver this. I'm very confident that this is in the best interest of everybody, and there is a path forward to achieve it.
You've criticized the government in the throne speech on being a lot of pretty words, that the Liberals are big on virtue signaling, but they don't always put their money where their mouth is. And all throne speech are, to a degree, a little bit airy-fairy. They're not specifics. Have you been given assurances on timelines and money when it comes to things like childcare and pharmacare?
No, we have not gotten any concrete assurances, and that's why I said off the top that I'm not going to be surprised if the Liberals promise the stars and the moon, because they do that often. They say a lot of good words, but they don't actually match those words with actions. And that's why I've been saying, what are your actions? Well, show me some concrete actions. Initially, the first action they were planning to take was to cut the help that Canadians who can't go back to work receive. They were going to cut it by $400. So that action does not match up with the words which sounded so positive. So that's why I was very skeptical about their words, and I've been fighting for real action to help Canadians. But those are important things. People want childcare. We need pharmacare, so we're going to keep on fighting for that as well. It
seems like the government isn't planning to put forward any kind of a budget this fall. It's going to be a fiscal update, but that's not a confidence vote. So when will you reevaluate whether this government is living up to the promises they've made to Canadians and to you in terms of whether or not you're going to support them?
Well, there's going to be votes. We know that there's going to be votes as they come up. There's supply motions which require consent of parties to continue to fund programs. There'll be many opportunities to hold this government to account, and we're going to continue to fight to make sure we use our position to get something that helps Canadians, that helps out families that are worried right now about a second wave, that helps out young people and workers, people that are not sure what's going to happen in the future. I want them to know that we're going to be there for them.
You and members of your caucus have been very critical of this government when it's come to the WE scandal. You asked a lot of tough questions. Do you have any qualms holding up a government that has had the ethical challenges that the Liberals have? Because at the end of the day, it is now the NDP that is keeping them in power.
Well, I am worried, absolutely, that this Liberal government continues to help out their friends or get involved in scandals where the scandal hurts the people that should be helped. With the WE scandal, students were hurt because this Liberal government wasn't able to deliver a program directly to students. So I am worried about that. But I'm most worried about how we can continue to get people help in a pandemic. And I know that being in an election right now with a second wave and with all sorts of worries about our loved ones, our seniors in long-term care homes, and people worried about testing and people worried about childcare and going to work sick, with all these worries, I think the best thing I can do is to continue to fight to get some help to those who need it.
The provinces are asking for $70 billion in more money for healthcare. If you were the Prime Minister, would you give them that money?
Well, the reason why they're asking for this amount of healthcare transfer increases is because the Harper government cut funding to healthcare, and then Prime Minister Trudeau continued that same cut to healthcare. And so they're really asking for healthcare to be restored and invested in. And I believe in that.
Didn't they just not escalate the amounts though versus cut?
Well, if you look at where we were supposed to be and where we are today, Harper put in place a plan to cut the overall spending to healthcare, and that plan is something that the Conservative government started, but the Liberal government under Prime Minister Trudeau continued. So we are facing less and less of a percentage of the federal government covering healthcare. It used to be a 50-50 share, and it's eroded over the times. Now it's about 25%. So we're seeing that consecutive Liberal and Conservative governments have cut funding to healthcare, and I think that's a wrong thing to do. And in a pandemic, we're feeling the results of that.
Do you think that the federal government should take over testing, given the lineups we're seeing and the challenges the provinces are having?
That's something that I'm really worried about. I think you're right to bring up the question because so many families are waiting in massive lineups for hours. Early in the pandemic, we thought an hour and a half wait was long. Now we know families waiting 4 or 5 hours, waiting all day to get tested. So there's got to be a better way to deliver that testing. I'm open to any solution where we work together to make sure testing is easier to access, the waits are not that long. We know that that is a clear path to helping us fight COVID-19. The better testing is, the better our response will be. We need to get better at it.
I know the NDP is a party that supports spending, that supports a lot of social programs. Do you have any concerns that the government has not put forward any kind of a costing or a plan, and that could affect the country's credit in the long term?
I am worried about us living within our means. There's no question about it. But I am firmly opposed to austerity. I do not believe the way out of this pandemic is to cut the help to people. That is not the way. But I do believe that during this time period, those who have profited off the pandemic should be the ones paying their fair share. And it shouldn't be everyday families and small businesses that have faced so much pain. They shouldn't be the ones that pay for this. But we know that there's companies that have made massive profits. Amazon, Netflix, companies that pay virtually no tax in Canada, they should pay their fair share. Canadian companies that have made profit but then hide their profit in offshore tax havens shouldn't be allowed to do that. So we know there's a path where we can ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. The Liberals are afraid to say the words, but a wealth tax. Fortunes of over $20 million. There should be a way for us to make those who are able to contribute pay their fair share.
One question that I wanted to ask you, we've seen in the news this week, the RCMP has not been allowing Sikh and Muslim officers who have a beard back onto the road because they say it creates an issue with wearing a mask and personal protective equipment. On Friday, the Prime Minister said that raised issues of discrimination. What are your thoughts on this RCMP policy?
Yeah, I think there's some serious flaws with the policy, and I think we absolutely need to be able to accommodate people of different backgrounds and different faiths so they can continue to contribute in a meaningful way. The officers are able to contribute and remain safe. They should be able to do so, and there needs to be an accommodation in place so they can continue to serve their communities.
How do you feel COVID is affecting some minority communities? You are a bearded Sikh, you wear a turban. I know we've heard stories about how difficult it is to try to find masks that you can tie around the back that fit on the beard. What effect does that have on people who are already marginalized in our society?
Well, certainly it's harder. There's not always the most beard compliant masks available, and so sometimes when you scramble to find a mask, it doesn't actually work or fit. So there are additional challenges, but I think we can rise to the occasion and make sure we don't let those challenges create barriers for people because of who they are. I know we can do better, and I think we should.
Mr. Singh, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much.